Hello, my name's Jade and welcome to my House of Flame and Shadow reading vlog. I've only ever done a couple reading vlogs. I'm still kind of working out my system of reading vlog, but since doing this one, I will say I'm currently reading Iron Flame and now I want to do more reading vlogs. I'm like thinking about it, like how would I update a vlog? This is the third book in the Crescent City trilogy. Apparently, book 4 has been confirmed, but this is the end of Bryce's story. It was very anticipated. It's been like 2 books since Sky and Breath came out. This is going to be a spoilery vlog. I do talk about the contents of this book throughout the vlog, so if you've not read it, you will be completely spoiled. I'm trying to think of how to give you non-spoilery thoughts, and it's really difficult because it's the last book in a series. I liked it as a last book. I think I have a couple issues with the structure of the trilogy as a whole. I would rate it maybe like an 8.5 out of 10. I think as a last book it was relatively strong. I liked a lot of what happened. Yeah, I just have a problem with the structure of the trilogy as a whole. I didn't realize this was going to be the last book, and I think that impacted my opinion a lot. I think, like, had I known that, I could have managed my expectations better. That being said though, my overarching opinion of this trilogy is still positive. It's more annoying than anything else because I feel like there's some potential that wasn't reached. But that's as non-spoilery as we could get, I think. You read House of Flame and Shadow? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'm gonna let the vlog commence. Okay, it's the end of a long day, so please excuse how I look, but I started House of Sky and Breath last night. I need to talk about the interrogation scene because I just need to. How painful is that scene? It's so weird seeing ACOTAR characters from Bryce's perspective, from like an outsider's perspective. Rhysand in particular, like, I have it written down, like, it's so weird seeing him be portrayed as scary, especially after Silver Flames, where like I lost like so much respect for him. And then Bryce just keeps talking about like how he's so intimidating, he's got the power here, he's a king. Oh, it's weird. Also, what's weird is I'm listening to the audiobook narrated by Elizabeth Evans. She's narrated all the Crescent City and all of the Throne of Glass books, but she didn't narrate any of the ACOTAR books. And so hearing her do like Amren's voice and like Azriel's voice is so bizarre. Bryce is like trying to catch them up quickly, and she says like, you must be the Fae of Midgard, must have come from here. And Rhys is like, yeah, but we don't have anything like that in our history, like we that never happened. And Amren is like, actually no, it did happen. There was a point where there was a war. When I came out, there were rumors that a great number of people had vanished, as if they had never been. Some said to another world, others said they'd moved to distant lands, still others said they were chosen by the cauldron and spirited away somewhere. So Amren like kind of confirms it, but he said, Ridgela said, I should pull it out and like fact check, but I rewatched my House of Sky and Breath video, and Ridgela said the way they talked about the cauldron as well, and the fact that like this whole world you can't do that in this world. The ridiculousness of this cauldron, the fact that it's gonna stand on par with Sarah's other series that are so much more logic based, in my mind at least. It made me thinking like, is the cauldron a gate, for lack of a better word, or what do they call them in Throne of Glass? They don't call them gates. It's mad how small it is. If it made the world, what is the cauldron? And did the Asteri make the cauldron and then weave up this little tale about how it created the worlds? Because when have we heard something like that? The Asteri coming up with lies to cover up the actual founding of the world? Doesn't sound familiar. I think there may be more to the cauldron. I wrote, Amren is so annoying. Amren just is annoying. She's always been annoying, and she doesn't fail to be here. And then of course we find out that the Asteri were in fact in Rhysand's world. They were just called the Daglan. Is that a term we know? Does anyone know this stuff? Both Rhys and Azriel instantly recognize that name, so this is like a big part of their history. They're talking about these different worlds. At some point I'll have to like compile a list of all the worlds we know, because if there are in fact 26 worlds according to the harp, Nestor's harp, then we know a good chunk. I love how no one is given Rhysand's world a name. It doesn't get a name, and then I had to like Google, does the Throne of Glass world have a name? And it doesn't. Only Midgard. Midgard's the only named world. So we have Midgard, we have the Throne of Glass world, and we have the ACOTAR world. Then we have the Asteri's home planet, the Volk, their planet. We have the gods from Throne of Glass, they have a planet. Amren, if Amren doesn't come from any of those other planets, then we have her planet, and we have Hel. And there was another one named, it's like Iphaxia or something, that managed to defeat the Volk. So we have 9. Whoa, that's way more than I was expecting. We know of at least 9 planets. There's a line about how, which I definitely said this, I can't remember if I said it in probably House of Earth and Blood. Az's power is similar to Rune's and Cormac's, but wilder, she says. So it seems like it's like their power is a weakened, you know, more watered down version of Azriel's power. Funny when they talked about winnowing and Bryce was like, you can teleport, and she was like, can't anyone on your planet? She's like, yeah, maybe 2. And I was like, okay, more than 2 can teleport on our planet. Oh, there's also a line that Bryce says that Erd had sent her here, and I think she's thinking like theoretically like the god had sent her here, fate had sent her, blah 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 blah. But there was a line in Sky and Breath about how Erd can walk between worlds, and then I remember like I definitely went off on a rant about, are the gods real? What does this mean? So if she's real, did Erd send her there? Anything's possible. And then they give her the magical translating pill, and I'm like, why do you have this just chilling? Like, how often do you need to translate what people are saying? Surely not very. Very convenient. Just very frustrating. Every time we go to Bryce, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to be here. Another thing I do want to talk about here, while we're like, I'm still in the very beginning of the book, this whole like, how many books are there going to be in the Crescent City world? Because originally it was contracted that there'd be 3, and there's been some reviews of this book, Flame and Shadow, being like a great end to the trilogy. Is this the last book in a trilogy? Because it's since been confirmed that there will be a book 4, but is it going to be like an ACOTAR situation where it's like a spin-off continuation series? I really hope not. I want to like, this is why I want to say this before I know. I really don't want this to be the book where we defeat the Asteri. I felt like there was such a big arc ready to go with the rebellion and Bryce stepping up to lead the rebellion. For that to all be smushed into this one book, the way we left off with Sky and Breath, like it's that all-time low that we're about to like arc up from, that makes sense. But also the Asteri are so bad that in my mind they're a Thanos. And with this whole multiverse thing, as soon as we knew there was a multiverse, and especially having read Earth and Blood, because the Asteri are that powerful, and the fact that they want to come and vanquish all the worlds, in my mind I immediately started like theorizing, and because I've been theorizing this for so long, in my head it's like become canon, that there would be this end game situation where they would all band together to defeat the Asteri. That like Bryce would go around being like, hey yo, there's these Asteri people and they're really bad, and they're going to want to capture as many worlds as they can, so it's in your best interest to help us defeat them now, because that will give us all a better chance of actually defeating them. And Bryce has even said to Rhysand that like, you're on their number 1 list because they used to be here and then you kicked them out and they're pretty mad about it. Like, it would be so cruel to know that there's this like multiverse situation and not give us that like proper tie-in where they at least extensively work together. I've flicked through this book because I was so stressed, because I needed to know how long it would take Bryce to get back to the crew, how long she's gonna stay in this other world. I think more than anything because I wanted to know like this multiverse situation, how is it gonna play out? And she's not in there for very long. I don't know exactly, but I know by the midway point she's back with the crew, or at least she's talking to them or something. So I don't think she's with Rhysand and Poe for very long. If that's all we get from this multiverse stuff, is this little like bloop, and that's it, I'm gonna be really upset. I'm gonna be really upset. So it's the next morning. I'm up to page 176, so I'm quite far way in. Not a ton has happened, but more so in the sense that like we're very much figuring things out. I don't mind the slow pace. This whole Bryce situation in the ACOTAR world, I have to like talk about my thought process. Bryce keeps drawing these interesting parallels, like about how females aren't respected in her world, in the Fae. I don't remember this. It doesn't sound shocking, but I don't specifically remember it. But I mean, again, it makes a ton of sense because of what we know with the Illyrians, and even like the High Lords, like none of them had High Ladies before Rhysand. We also have like the Sobex underneath the Great, from the ones in the Bone Quarter, or they're dark twins, so they sound like they're more evil versions. And it's so interesting the fact that like Nesta and Azriel have no idea what's under there. Like they don't go down to these places, these deep dark places. Like if you had like a world built on top of this stuff, I would be curious. I would want to know what's going on down there. I was really confused as well why Nesta was the one who was doing all this. Like why would you send Nesta down? And it's so funny the way Bryce keeps referring to Nesta as this warrior, and she is a warrior, but in my mind she's still a newbie. But she explains that like star on Bryce's chest was the same as a star that she had tattooed on her at one point. And again, I can't for the life of me remember this tattoo, but like she inferred that like the power and the bond behind whatever that tattoo is for might be significant, but it's not there anymore. Whatever this tattoo was, I'm gonna have to Google so much of this. But she said she saw it somewhere else as well, and again, I for the life of me can't like remember where else she saw it, and she's not said yet. The bit that I've like left off at, they've come to like a metal wall described as, which is interesting that she described it as metal and not like stone. That would suggest like some kind of modernization. This wall has the star imprinted and like a door's just open, and there are all these like drawings on the walls that are like giving them clues as to the past, and like little bits and pieces kind of alluding to stuff we'd know from them before, but I don't remember enough to make any sense of it, to be honest. It is giving big Tower of Dawn vibes when Irene and Chaol are like looking around. I can't even remember where it was, but if you read Tower of Dawn, you know. They meet the Sandworm, which at first I'm like, lol, not the Sandworm coming in from Dune, because that's literally what I'm imagining. And then Nesta made a reference that Feyre has fought it before, and I kind of remember that from ACOTAR when like what was her name? Well, is it Amaranthi? Bryce also makes an allusion, again, according to one of these pictures, that Vanir were given humans to rule over. Rigidus said this, and I don't know if it's referring to her world or this world, the Rhysand world that shall not be named, because the fact that the picture I think is alluding to Rhysand's world would suggest that the Vanir in this world got humans to rule over, and humans pretty much have the same, like it's a very similar disrespect situation. But is that suggesting that the Vanir created humans? They brought humans over? How did they give them to them? So funny how like Az has been so clumsy, and it's so obvious to us that Az is following them because like a rock scatters and there's a group of shadows over there, because she doesn't know. I feel like Az wouldn't be so clumsy. I don't know. Whatever. Nesta explains to Bryce like her sword is called Adorexia, and her sword like kills things that can't be killed, like anything, it will kill anything. And Bryce is like, yeah, my sword's the same. Isn't that how she killed the Bone Reaper thingy-mabobbers? Forget how Nesta got her sword, but again, it's alluding they all came from the same power, and I'm assuming it's the cauldron. Nesta also made a reference. She killed someone, I think their name was Ianthus, and they're a contemporary of the Daglan, so that would suggest that we have heard about the Daglan before. I cannot remember this guy. Little did I know we needed to reread Silver Flames and House of Sky and Breath for this. Also, side note, I really like Nesta and Azriel's relationship. When she puts on the mask and he's like, don't you dare, don't you dare. And it comes out that like Rhys orchestrated this whole little adventure. He knew she would go down the Great, and they wanted to see how far like she would go. How did they know? Like, what if there was nothing under there that actually cooled to her and she just got stuck and then came back up? Seems like a flawed plan. And then they get to this chasm. Azriel can't fly across and they can't make a bridge. Why doesn't Azriel winnow across? Because Az can winnow. Why did he have to like shoot Bryce up? I mean, I think like plot wise, from that, you know, being shot with that power, she describes his power as being undiluted, which would make sense that the Asteri would water down the Vanir's power so that they couldn't challenge them. I mean, that makes sense, right? I didn't pick up on it earlier, but after Azriel convinces Nesta to take the mask off, he says thank the mother. We're talking about this cauldron because there's this like picture of the cauldron. They say the mother brought it into this world. I literally wrote, who is mother? I do not remember this at all. And they talk about like when they die, what happens. And Bryce describes about the whole second light ordeal, and they don't really seem like they're gonna go anywhere. And like, I can't fully remember. I remember it being confusing. And Azriel says we go to the mother and everything's wonderful and as it should be. And I'm like, who is this mother? But like, actually, who is this mother? I keep coming back to like, are these gods real gods? And Bryce starts thinking it like, did the gods come with her? Where did they come from originally? Like when all the worlds came together in Midgard through the rift. He's like explaining who her gods are and that Urd is the god of all gods. It seems like she leads all of them because she's the god of fate. And Ness is like, well, that's kind of like what our cauldron does, maybe. So maybe Urd and the cauldron are linked. If Urd is, the way we keep talking about Urd. Is Urd mother? I still like think it's kind of ridiculous that Rhysand orchestrated all this. Like, what if nothing was down there? What? I'm liking Bryce's and Nessa's relationship. She's explaining to her how a phone works. Like in different circumstances they would get along. Kind of Nessa, now that I think about it, almost gives, what's her friend? The scary one? The like assassin one? Similar vibes. I'm having fun with Nesta, Azriel and Bryce. I think it's like a fun collection of characters together there. Oh, Bryce also alluded to when she put on the mask, there was like this wind and it felt like when she was in the Bone Quarter. And so I really think the monster bad things in this world, one under the library, there was one in like Akawar that ran away in the end, they couldn't get her back. The Bone Carver, like the siblings, these like dark siblings that also give me Volg vibes. I really think that they're connected to the Bone Quarter. Like as time goes on, it just makes sense. She got a chill from the Bone Quarter, but isn't the mask made? So that would be the cauldron. I don't know. It's later the same day, but everything has gotten so stressful and we're like a quarter of the way through the book. This is like a quarter of the way through and it's this stressful now. What's coming? They're talking to Selene. She is the daughter of Thea. I'm assuming she's like the missing daughter that they didn't know about. Rune's hand just got bitten off and then friggin' Rigulus walks in and I want to scream. I can't believe the fact that his hand is going to grow back as well. Like I just can't get over that, and they spent so long trying to bite it off for Rigulus to walk in. We have the Hind who is doing everything she can and she's like even got her period so that Pollux will leave her alone, and then he's not leaving her alone. The harpy is going to be fixed or whatever. And then on top of it all we have Ethan having to fight Sigrid. And because she's a Fenrir, like she won't back down, and I think he just killed her. That or she's like, maybe she'll just suspend her healing and they'll be able to fix her. Maybe. I don't know. Everything's really stressful. It's really gearing to starting to feel like it's like the beginning of a conclusion. It's pretty slow paced. It's hard because we're split between different perspectives, but realistically, for like Bryce, Hunt, the Hind, and then Ethan and crew, maybe Therion, but they seem to have joined now and become one. But at the same time they all have these like pretty solid goals, these like pretty solid things that they're working toward, like pretty important, and it doesn't feel like any of them are treading water per se. All of it feels important, good stuff, so I don't mind that it's going slow. I don't know, I'm really enjoying it so far though. I definitely think there's some things in the writing that I picked up. I hate how often we're switching perspectives within chapters. Like I don't mind switching perspectives, but like jumping between the different storylines, those 4 different storylines, I wish like it would stick to 1 per chapter or maybe like 2 at a push. I just don't see the need. I suppose it's like building up momentum, making everything feel more tense and stressful and exciting, I suppose. But it does feel jarring because like we're not in them for long enough to like really get stuck in it, especially with this like Selene explaining to Azriel, Nesta and Bryce what's going on. I hope there's like a reason why this is happening. It's low-key reminding me of Throne of Glass with Elena. Is she a ghost? How did that work? So I don't know, like I'm hoping there's a reason like why this recording is here and how it's here and who came and put it back. Part of me was thinking like, did Danica come and put it back? Because with this language, I completely forgot to say, the language on Bryce's back is from the Book of Breathing, and I can't remember what the Book of Breathing is, but obviously therefore it's not like ancient Fae. That would just be like Bryce's language, it wouldn't be in a different language. What is this language? What does it mean in the Book of Breathing's translation? Does it mean through level is possible? What's going on there? I hope this is clarified. Okay, so it's the next day. A lot has gone down. I'm now on part 2, the search. What are we searching for? And a lot has happened. I want to like recap all of the Bryce stuff because now that we're in a different part, like it's taken a different direction. She's with the Autumn King right now, and the banter, her everything she says is golden. Oh, I left the last thing we talked about together was when they went through the door. It took them to the place where Nesta found the harp, where like the harp is floating above the star. Nesta describes the harp as being able to stop time, and I mean it can travel through the worlds, but I didn't remember the stopping time part. That's the last place she saw the star, so when she was being all like cryptic about that's not the last place I saw the star, it's here. I loved the fact that Azriel like took her hand and he wouldn't let it go. That was really cute. And then in that room it's like full of the constellations of Bryce's world. She lists off all the planets, and some of them are the names of warriors that would like cross over. Azriel says that like Selene looks like Rhys's sister, so it's like it's obvious that like they're coming from the same line or something to that effect. I have the tithe explained. I mentioned it and I was like confused earlier because I felt like I recognized that term, and it's basically that world's version of like them sacrificing their first light to the Asteri. So the Asteri have always done this, and it was the Asteri that made the trove originally. Can't remember off the top of my head how they made it, how they acquired it, but they like barely ever used it because they were so paranoid. But it's interesting that it was theirs and not like, it doesn't seem like it was Cauldron made. And they talked to us as well about how like the Cauldron was of their world, it was theirs, but then the Asteri came and corrupted it. And that would kind of actually make sense because Nesta has like she really hates the Cauldron. Obviously she's got lots of trauma there, but I swear like when she was in there she was like it didn't feel good to be in there, it felt wrong, it felt unnatural. And so I'm wondering if that's the Asteri's doing, because the way everyone else talks about the Cauldron and the fact that it's natural and it like the mother created it, like that image doesn't align with like this experience. So me like that actually kind of makes sense. I'm wondering if the Cauldron would always have been able to like turn humans into fae. Like what is this called? Who made this? This is what I want to know. Who actually made this Cauldron? Who is mother? What's going on here? But Finn, Thea and Co used the Cauldron to make the Star Sword and Truth there, which as I figured it out that's why it's similar. They have a similar power to Nesta's sword because they're all Cauldron magic related. That's why they do the same thing. And Finn is actually the first High King. And then it goes off on one about how like Thea was actually this like murdering tyrant. When Finn died, like she stole the trove. Just wasn't a great person in general, was like pretty power hungry, and Peleus really emphasized that in her. And so they got power hungry and they willingly went to Midgard. They decided like no one made them. That was their choice, and they got there and the Asteri like bugged the water, and so that's why everyone has to give them their first light, like it's a trap. Oh, and we I was getting so stressed about the fae that could turn into animals. They confirmed that like Vanir came from all different worlds, but which obviously also makes sense because of like the vampires and like the witches. And I had a thought like it's interesting that like there must be a world of witches out there, and I wonder how similar and or different they are to Manon's witches. Sure, they're very different because they're not half fae, half Vogue. Another thing they say about the fae that came from the Throne of Glass world though, apart from the fact that like they had animal forms, was that they were like wilder. I love that. It makes me wonder though, like chronologically, I'm assuming this is oh my goodness, I can't remember either of the names, the two Fae Queens. I'm wondering if this is before their time, because obviously like, although is it a thing that they say no one knows, like did they die? Do we know for sure that they died? Do we know where they went? What if they went to this Midgard world? Maybe was just like, yeah, no, won't be me, nope, absolutely not, stay right here. Another thing that like happened at one point is like Bryce asked where they came from, and this Asteri is like, oh, from a green world that was lovely, but then we sucked it dry. And I swear to God that's the exact same thing Maeve said when she was traveling worlds. She's like, I was traveling worlds and then I found this one and it was green and beautiful, so I decided to stay here. These leeches coming after these green worlds. And then when we see Selene using her magic, Bryce made a comment that like Selene's magic is not just light like Bryce's magic, that there's like power behind her light like the Asteri's magic, which is interesting that Selene had the same magic as the Asteri. Like how? I'm assuming this light magic originated with Thea, they were like starborn. That's their thing. That was like their power, their, you know, their seasonal spin on it, if you will. Like, you know how Rhys is like night magic, and I can't remember if Tamlin, oh my god, Tamlin, I'm assuming he has like spring magic. But why is that their magic so similar? Like that doesn't seem right. Like, she collected these monsters, these pets of the Daglin, she calls them. Isn't the bone carver in the prison, isn't he one of these pets? So where did the Asteri, that, like, that's where they came from. They came with the Asteri. So where did the Asteri pick them up from? Or did they originate from under the mountain? Celine's the one that turned it into the prison. Originally it was this like dusk palace, this dusk court. She has a kid, and that kid has a legacy. I started ACOTAR wikiing it, and ACOTAR wiki says that this guy she got with was actually a High Lord. And so that's how it like tumbled down to Rhysand. What I want to know is, how is Bryce connected them? Because she is of Thea's line. Did Helena have children? Is she like a spawn of Selena? A spawn of Selena? A spawn of Helena? I assume they died. I feel like there was something mentioned about how the Asteri wanted to control that bloodline. But then surely the solution to that would not be to breed more of these rebellious problem makers. And so that's basically Celine's little tale. And then we go back to Nesta and Azriel, and they're like, we need to tell this to Rhys immediately, which makes sense. But obviously Bryce is like, to do what? So you can interrogate me and carve the horn out of my back? And I can see Nesta and Azriel's perspective, that like, they have to protect their homeworld. If anything, especially because I don't understand how Bryce is like connected through the line to Thea, like, but we know for sure that Rhys is a descendant of Selene. Like, this is his baggage, his like heritage baggage, the like stuff he's inherited feels more so than Bryce, because his bloodline is the one that like deserted their people there. So if anyone like needs to help and like help figure this situation out in terms of like weighing on their conscience, it's Rhysand. It's his, like, it feels like it's his responsibility as much as it's Bryce's. It's just that it's not affecting his world. We go to the Asteri. I think she calls Azriel a foot soldier. So Vespers, who is the Evening Star. It's interesting that the Asteri all name themselves after stars. I mean, it's not maybe that interesting because they claim they have the power of a star. It's all very celestial up in here. And then we have a nice conversation with her. I didn't write anything down from that conversation, so I'm assuming we didn't get a lot of information. And ultimately it doesn't matter because Nesta killed her. Like, Nesta killed an Asteri. Nesta's like, don't mess with Nesta. At one point Bryce says that like Nesta's the top of the food chain in that room, but at first I was like, oh, like more than Az? And then I was like, she killed an Asteri. I thought her power was like docked and like taken back a step in Silver Flames, and then she goes back to her own world and she's with the Autumn King right now. He's like been wanting to make the Fae stronger because he's worried about like the Asteri losing respect for them, and also like other Vanir like becoming more powerful and then like again overtaking them on the food chain. So it's kind of like, that makes sense because he's kind of like wanting to protect his people. Like, that actually feels like relatively noble, maybe. And so that's why he had the star map thing made, and why he's been spending so much time in there, and he's been charting patterns. And then like Bryce now apparently has Celine's power. She like picked it up in that room somehow. Just that all kind of felt a little convenient for my liking. Like the weird hologram thing, like how did she do that? She doesn't have any tech. As far as I'm aware, they don't have any magical objects that allow you to record a hologram. It's like the silver pill that Bryce takes so she can speak other languages, and the weird orb that captures them. Like, these things all feel very convenient. And she like made her magic into a laser. And so that's like that's kind of where I'm at. I'm in the middle of a chapter. I also realised that I've literally talked about none of our other plot lines. I haven't mentioned like Ethan at all. Where I'm at with Ethan is he's talking to Jessica, which I don't know how I feel about. He wants to resurrect Sigrid, which now kind of like House of Flame and Shadows is making more sense because that's where Ethan currently is. And we've also got this like sideline thing with Derry. The reason they wanted Sophie's lightning and the reason they want Hunt's lightning is to bring people back to life, like Frankenstein style is what I'm imagining. Lydia finds out that they're going to try and fix the harpy, and this is obviously like a big no-no because it wasn't, I can't even remember who like took the blame for killing the harpy. I feel like it's probably Bryce, but like Lydia was actually the one that killed her. And so if that happens, then like everyone's gonna know that Lydia, well, the Harpy will tell everyone that Lydia killed her. So that's really stressful. And they managed to take the lightning from him, and Adis is like, yeah, best not to do that again, bro. I love the Princess of Hell as well, when like they were visiting Hunt and they were having like that little conversation. It was so funny. But at least now like Therian's out, those guys are like on their way for backup. Lydia seems to have a plan, she's working on it. I think we're gonna get him out relatively soon. It's kind of frustrating that Bryce is like stuck with her dad at this point, like she's locked up, but at the same time he made a really good point. As long as she's there, the Asteri aren't looking for her, like no one knows she's there yet. And it seems like he might maybe want to work against the Asteri, like the point literally where I worked off, that's kind of what the direction they're going in. I'm just realizing I've had this on the whole time. Last time I did a reading vlog, I got a tattoo. It seems like this is a thing. I can't do a reading vlog without being tattooed. This was actually just a touch-up. Feels very fitting to these books. It does actually make me think a little bit of ACOTAR, this tattoo, which I really like. Yeah, I think there's everything from this update. I have to say though, I am having a blast. I am, well, that might be putting it too strongly. I think now Bryce is home. Don't get me wrong, I loved the little side quest she went on with Nesta and Azure. I loved that it was quite self-contained. It felt less stressful that way to me for some reason. And I loved that it was Azure and Nesta. I love their relationship, and I just think that dynamic is really fun. I think we're gonna get more like fun Bryce banter now she's out, because they weren't really on her wavelength. I love that she kept trying though, and I really do think in another life Nesta and Bryce could be friends. There was something there. The only thing that I'm nervous about is like the second half, when we're gonna stop being like on the defense and start going offense, I suppose, when we're gonna start like actually working towards stuff. I feel like it might end up being a bit rushed, or I don't know. That's the only worry I have. It's been some time. I think I last talked to you Wednesday. It's now Saturday morning. I can't remember where I was when I spoke to you last. I'm just at like the halfway point. I've only been talking about stuff that's related to Bryce, so I figured I'd go back and talk about the rest of my thoughts I had for part 1 before it gets too late and you get too much whiplash with me going back and forth. I have Therian being bound to the Viper Queen, and she was like making him drink his blood. Well, it's not explicit that she made him do it though, and he felt like a lot of shame about that. Like it's kind of more so suggested that like she offered and he took it. I don't know how addictive her venom is. I hated that. I hated that so much. And then when they came and saw him and he was all ashamed, I just hated the Therian situation. I really wish he talked to someone. I also have Ariadne there, and it sounds like Ariadne wasn't like enslaved to her. I remember she ran away, and she like they kept mentioning that she bailed on Hypaxia and Bryce, but I cannot for the life of me remember what actually happened with her. I vaguely remember, like I remember her disappearing, but I don't remember why or when or how. Like the way they talk about it though makes me think that she wasn't like enslaved by the Viper Queen, or like maybe even that they had like a deal similar to Therian's where she's like tied to the Viper Queen. It sounded like she could technically leave if she wanted to, or there by choice. Like what's going on with Ariadne? I feel like she must have some kind of backstory, and now she's just gone again. I can't even remember where she is. Is she with Sabine? Someone else bought her from the Viper Queen. The way Ariadne was talking about like how she's a dragon and how people wouldn't trust her because she's a dragon, it does make me think about like how are dragons thought of in this world. And it's interesting because if they are like anti-hell and they think hell's bad, and they think like, you know, they were at war with hell for so long because this is what the Asteri brainwashed them to believe, dragons can defeat the princes of hell, surely dragons would be like really valuable and respected and stuff. I don't know, Ariadne has some baggage, Therian has some baggage. I really hope we get to watch them both work it out. I want to know what's going on with Ariadne. I think she's got more of a backstory there. Have Ethan and Sigrid and Declan and Mark and Flynn. I love Flynn so much. In the audiobook, he has a southern accent and it's the best. He's like just desperately like, we have to get Therian out, we have to help him. It's so cute. I love Ethan so much. It's mentioned that shifters have stronger senses than Fae. Oh, I just got it, because shifters aren't derived from I felt so smart. It just like clicked into place. Because I assumed that like they had the Asteri brought a bunch of Fae over and they turned some of them into different things, which that's not the case. They came from all kinds of different worlds, didn't they? That's like why we have vamps and that's why we have witches, because they came from other worlds. And the shifters are descendants of the Throne of Glass Fae. This is what I'm assuming. They have like elemental magic, they can shift into animals, it has to be. And the Fae are descendants of Rhysand's Fae. and their bloodline's been watered down anyway. Oh, and obviously we also have Rune and Hunt and Baxian and Lydia and their whole situation. God, just like every time I read Lydia, it was really hard. But also it's been so long since I read the other two books that I like, whatever she did as the Hind, I remember hating the Hind, but whatever she did, I've kind of just like automatically forgiven her. When did Hunt and Bryce get married? I cannot remember this. Back to Tharian and crew, because I think they have the most that like actually is going on. Sabine shows up at the meat market and they shoot her face off. She's gonna be so mad when she like comes back for Ethan. She's gotta go because she's not gonna let that slide. So that's it, we gotta get rid of Sabine. I loved it so much when Ethan was like, yeah, we're a pack, you know, and when they like finally get to reunite with Tharian and start talking. And then Tharian even mentions it later on when he's on the boat to, was it to Hunt? I can't remember. He's like, I don't love like the wolf sentiment there, but like I kind of agree. It was so cute. I love Ethan. I hate how much guilt he feels because he like killed Sigrid, but it's like the whole like she's a Fender, so she wasn't gonna back down. That was a really crappy situation that the Viper Queen pulled. We're gonna bring her back now that we have Hypaxia on board. Like where I'm at now, we have Hypaxia on board. He's been working with Jessica. There was like some stuff went down with Hypaxia as well. Like she's no longer a queen. They like kicked her out, and I forget. I know she's like half sisters or stepsisters or something with Lydia, but I forget how that works exactly. Like how, on what, like how? Hypaxia's like, she's like half necromancer, half witch or something, like, and she's not really accepted on either side, I feel like. And then it sounds like her and Jessica have some kind of like friendship or like some kind of backstory history, but we know that she and Celestina are now donezo because Hypaxia got mad at Celestina for selling out her friends. So it really just sounds like a crappy time for Hypaxia. But she's helping Ethan. Where I'm at, they've not actually started doing anything yet. I think that might be where I left off, where Jessica was like, she's ready for you, go. And actually the last thing I have in my notes, I might as well say now we're on that line, Jessica that says it as well, something about how the Fenders were bred, or like Danica was bred, and they were talking about like why would the Asteri breed Danica to then kill her, and Jessica was like she was getting too close to the truth. On the topic of Jessica, she's human. He'd heard about the doom stand at Parthos and the ships and the priestesses burned with their bucks. He was curious about what might be so valuable to the humans that we were willing to die for. He didn't understand when I told him it was no power beyond knowledge, no weapon beyond learning. He refused to believe me and cursed me for my impudence in denying him the truth. It's not cool, bro. What kind of a curse? To live unchanging until I showed him the power of the books. He still believes they're a weapon. I'll one day grow tired enough of living that I'll hand them over and reveal their supposed secret weapon. And he's like, but I thought you were a witch. And she says, I was for a time. How do you categorize a human woman who stops aging, who always reverts to the same age, the same physical condition as she was when she was cursed? So she was a priestess at Parthos. Jessica's old. Then she was a witch and now she's a sorceress. She's like high up in command in terms of the House of Flame and Shadow, right? She's like second in command or something. Adis found that I posed no threat and discovered that I still had the library and remained defiant to his brother's demands to reveal the so-called power. Adis and I became friends of a sort. We still are. I suppose it's because we're so used to each other now. It's been a long time. So what did he report to Apollyon? That I was respected but left alone. And did Apollyon listen? He sends Adis to check in every once in a while. Oh, and so this is to do with the astronomer because she paid the astronomer to try and figure out how to undo whatever Apollyon did to her. Poor Jessica. Jesus Christ. Girl's been through it. No wonder she's so cold and jaded. We also have this whole situation going on with these mystics looking for Bryce. These mystics is awful. It sounds like no matter what kind of mystics you are, whether you're with the astronomer or the Asteri, if you're a mystic, it sounds like you've got a pretty crappy life. And they're all looking for Bryce and they can't find her. And I wrote at some point, like, is there a reason why they can't find her? Is it because there's so many worlds and this wee sand world is so far away? So back to Hunt and Co, because this is where stuff starts to like come together. Have the breakout scene and it's the coolest. Just so exciting. I was so nervous and excited. Sarah J Maas knows how to write a good breakout scene. I remember there was one in Mist and Fury, but I can't remember what it was like, but I'm so vividly remember the breakout scene in Kingdom of Ash. Like I was pacing and I couldn't stop. I was so stressed and excited at the same time, and it was the exact same thing with this one. That scene was so cool. She shot the Hulk. Didn't she shoot him in the head? Rune's automatically like in love with her because she nearly died and she got them out. So like I feel like this has happened like other times in Sarah J Maas books. Like someone would just say something and it'd just be like boom, okay, never mind. But plot twist, Lydia has sons and we don't know who the dad is. Serves the Ocean Queen, who is also really old, who's also been there before the Asteri. She sounds like a pain in the ass. And so she's like undercover for the Ocean Queen. This whole time she's been undercover for the Ocean Queen so that her kids can stay safe on the boat. And then that causes like tension between Rune and Lydia. And she's like, now that I have sons and it makes sense. Like, now that you know that I'm not like actually a horrific monster, now you want to talk to me? But I don't understand why he doesn't just say, no, it was when you saved me and when I saw you nearly die for us. Like, that's what, like, I was in your room when you woke up. Don't you remember that? And instead he just gets all defensive and he's like, what's your sub-story, Lydia? And she's like, you don't deserve it. You tell him, Lydia. We have the Ocean Queen, who doesn't really want to get involved. She's like survived this whole time by keeping out of the way, essentially. And she's like gonna punish Therion because both the Viper Queen and the River Queen want him. And Bryce comes in and she's like, actually, he's a member of my court. I'm the queen of the Valbaran Fae. This is my mate. And he's like the consort, the prince consort, whatever. It was such a good entrance. I knew she was gonna do that. So the Ocean Queen, she's really old and she wants them, like the Asteri, to leave her alone and she wants them to flee. I feel like that wouldn't have been brought up unless something's going to come of it. Like, she wants them to flee and she's like, well, could you just promise me one thing, that if you do leave you'll take as many of my people as you can? Bryce is right. She's like, you're a coward. Like, that makes you know better than the people that put us here in the first place. I loved Bryce's and Hunt's interaction when like she fills them in on everything that happened and then they fill her in and she's like, I need a minute, and she leaves the room and Hunt's there and he's like, Quinlan, and then she like just starts crying and he holds her. Oh, that was so cute. And then they have that little like argument and she's like, this isn't what I want to be talking about right now. What's going on there, hun? That's not cool. But I like that we started off with this like more interesting dynamic. We haven't had a sex scene yet, period, and we're like halfway through the book. So we're now on the same page, we're up to date. Those are all the thoughts that I've had thus far. Okay, we were on the ship still. Much has happened. So we're leaving the ship. Therion just jumps off the boat and Flynn's like, go, go, go. It kind of makes sense because we can't have Therion being stuck on there. What he's gonna do afterwards, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out then. He's in so much trouble anyway that like... Ugh. So we get to Avalon and Flynn's sister is there, Sathia, and she's in trouble. And Avalon's really sexist and women have to either be married with a parent, with a father, with an uncle, a brother, someone like that needs to account for them. I can't remember why, but the idiot king wouldn't let it be Flynn, and so Therion steps up to the plate and says he'll marry her because, you know, he's a good male. Therion, I really love Therion. We also have this line about how the murder twins, their magic, their shadow magic is wilder. We keep having this thing about like how Az's magic was wilder and their magic here is wilder. Is it because of the ley lines? Why is their magic stronger? Why isn't their magic been watered down? And the Valbaran, Crescent City, Lunathian Fae have. Fae females also can't get divorced. It draws back to that line that Bryce said, like, why are females so disrespected? It does make me wonder if this is something the Asteri have brought along, because the way the Illyrians are the exact same, but there are female Asteri. So why would the Asteri do that? Is it like a controlling tactic? Avalon also has no computers, like they're completely in the Dark Age because the king refuses to update it because he wants it to be the exact same as when Peleus was there, and like Avalon basically is like, did I write it here? Avalon line goes back to Peleus. Side note, we also have this Aether and Hypaxia situation. They try to revive Sigrid and the Underking shows up and claims her as a Reaper, and Sigrid's all pissed at Ethan because he killed her. So that's just fantastic. So now the Underking has her and they're like, oh, there is one other way, but we need Sophie Renast's body because they're going to do the same thing that the Asteri want to do essentially. And where's Sophie's body? Avalon. But then they never actually get to go because Asphodel Meadows gets bombed and it's just horrific, and Ethan runs straight over it and he's like, there's not enough pack members here, like there's not enough Vanir. One needs to step up to lead, and it like adds more fire that he needs to get Sigrid back to life so that she can change the wolves. And I have this feeling that it's not going to be Sigrid. I have this feeling we're not going to be able to revive her and that Ethan's going to have to step up to the plate, which would be really suck because we barely saw Sigrid and she barely got a shot at life because he's putting so much pressure on it being Sigrid that I feel like it has to then be Ethan, and he would make a great prime. Back to Avalon. Hunt and Bryce bang and something with their magic happens, and Bryce Hunt comes out and he's like, that was weird, I feel weird. At first I thought, is this because they're mates? Like, it kind of almost reminded me of Rhysand and Feyre. And then I was like, is it because Avalon's like this weird place? But then Bryce says something about how she is made. What page is it? 457. Made. That's what it feels like. Whatever power can flow between us, my made power from the horn can too. I don't understand. What does she mean? Can their powers flow between each other? Did that happen in Sky and Breath? I remember they banged once before and like they teleported and he had the lightning on her, but like that wasn't like power going into each other. I don't fully understand what happened there. And they're not really communicating. Bryce and Hunt has all this guilt, and Bryce is like has a grudge against Hunt because he has this guilt, and he's like, I can give you so much but I can't give you everything. And she's like, no, that's not good enough. I need everything, Hunt. But then they just keep dropping it. They're not fully communicating. And I don't see this ending well. Like, there will have to be a reckoning at some point. And I feel like he's hiding stuff from her. He's not fully explaining this whole guilt situation. He keeps saying this is not his fault. And he doesn't believe her. And Therian, I feel like, was harboring a lot of guilt. At one point, he had a really low self-esteem. And so did Rune. And it's just, all these males are messed up. It's a toxic male society they live. We also have this like line going through about how Bryce doesn't care about the Fae. She says like the Fae don't deserve to be reunited. The Avalon King says to Rune at one point, like, what's she gonna do though? And he's like, I trust her. The King's like, I prayed, and Luna said that it's not gonna be her. It's like, he insinuates it's gonna be Rune. And part of me is like, is Luna right? Because I feel like Rune would be a better king just because he cares about the Fae a little bit more. And I felt really sad when he wasn't the star-born one and he wasn't all powerful. Sathya also calls out Bryce about the fact that not all Fae are bad. She's like, yeah, I know it sucks, but it's the system I was born into and I want someone to come along to change it. And I'm like screaming at the book at this point. It was exactly the same when she was like reluctant to join the rebels. And I know it's more complicated than this, but it seems like she just can't be bothered because she didn't want to get involved in the rebellion for so long. Like, it took so much to convince her. And it feels like it's the same thing again. Like, yeah, the Fae suck. That's why we need someone to come along and change it. And she's judging it off of like the people that like were shut up in their homes and didn't help, and these are like the privileged, these are like minorities. And like even Sathya said, like, I wanted to go help but I was like locked up, I couldn't do anything. And then Baxton talks to her and he says this exact thing to her. He's like, well, think of all the Fae you know. And she even like says that the Fae in the other world didn't seem that bad, and like in another lifetime they could have been friends. She says something to that effect, and I was just like, oh, please. So I think she's coming around now, but I really like, there was a lot of emphasis put on that for like a little bit. It was really interesting though. It was really interesting conflict, I think, but it seems like it might be over. I wish that like could have like been less condensed, because we had like 3 mentions of it within like at least 100 pages, maybe even 50 pages. And I wish it was spread out a little bit more. I wish like that could have come to a better head. Anyway, we're going through these caves. There's also a river. Again, very matchy. Is there a reason why they match so much? Because Helena created these caves and she couldn't have gotten contact with Selene to be like, psh, what are you doing in your cave? So it's weird that they like match. We find out about the ley lines. Avalon was supposed to be full of earth magic. And Flynn and Sathya can't feel it. They say it feels like it's rotting. And then they find Peleus, and we find out that Helena built the crypt, and that the whole caves are built with black salt to summon demons through this like weird mind connection thing. And then this is where stuff just like, it really takes a turn. I loved it when she like went to drink the stuff, the water, to connect with Adis, to try and talk to Adis, and Hunt was like, don't you dare, like knocks it out of her hand, and she's like, what, this isn't the time to be an alcohol. And then he's like, finishes, without me going with you. And it was cue my reaction to that scene. Hunt is Apollyon's son. Apollyon has lightning magic. That's where Hunt gets his lightning magic from. And I went back and I'm looking at Crescent City, the epilogue of Crescent City. I think Arthur's father would have been proud. Jasper says sentimental of you. Adis shrugged, as best his feline body would allow. Feel free to disagree, of course. You knew the Mel best. Why is he talking past tense when Apollyon's very much still around? Is Apollyon the worst one? I think he is. Who's Hunt's mummy then? I always got the impression that Adis was more involved than Apollyon was, although we've been hearing a lot about Apollyon these last 2 books. So I was so confused. First of all, black crowns were colorless in hell. They were made by the Asteri, and it was ultimately the Asteri's downfall in this situation, much like the Trove was their downfall with the other Fey world. They tried to like contain the princes of hell, and the princes of hell cannot be contained. And this is why they were so confused that Hunt has one on him, because his magic is from the princes of hell. There's a lot of like low-key info dumping here, so I'm just gonna regurgitate as much of it as I can. We know that Thea gave her daughters some of her magic, and we started doing maths. She gave a third to each of her daughters. She inherited Helena's through the bloodline, and she picked up Celine's when she went to the cave, so she has 2/3 of Thea's magic. And then we're like trying to find the other third. It was originally the Star Sword, but Helena moved it so that the Asteri couldn't take it. And the reason why Truth Teller and the Star Sword, they like want to be reunited because that's how they originally were when they were made in the cauldron, and Thea made them, and so they want to be reunited. And that's also why she didn't go to hell. That's why she went to Rhysand's world, to get Truth Teller. I feel so bad for Az. Like, he's so down on his luck right now. The one thing he had is his little dagger, and Bryce had to go and take it, and I don't think he's getting it back. When you put them together, they'll go to nowhere, which we already knew from the Autumn King. What this nowhere means, who knows? Princes of Hell assume mass destruction. Great. Perfect. Let's do it anyway, though. And these ley lines that we mentioned that Moon and Lydia started talking about, they run across the whole universe. This is where it gets exciting. These are places where the magic is particularly stronger, and where they overlap, the barrier between worlds is weakest. So immediately, like, you think like the prison from Akatar Land. In Tower of Dawn, I'm assuming that like situation where you know who spawned came from. I'm assuming that is one of these thin places, they call it. And what is also thin places are the northern and the southern rifts. And the whole order with the mists is that they're an indication of this thin place. And we also have such thing as world walkers, and these are people that can inherit the ability and like learn the ability to walk between worlds without like the harp and the horn per se, and Bryce is one of those anyway, and the fact that she has the horn is just like an extra little precaution. Although actually they want her to open the northern rift with it, which we'll get into that in a bit. World walk, wondering how many there are then, because we know of at least one from Throne of Glass. I feel like Nesta, maybe she could be one. Okay, I'm back. I had to stop to go cook dinner. It's revealed that Helena set up the whole Star Sword like prophecy situation, and like planted this whole the weapons need to be reunited thing in hopes of like someday finding someone who will be able to defeat the Asteri and like claim the power. And that Hunt is vaguely the son of both Thanatos and Apollyon. There were these experiments, and they were like trying to create someone who could be a battery for Bryce. Someone like you, a world walker, did come along, and Avalon was somehow not accessible for you to claim Thea's power. We still needed a way to fuel you up, as it were. During the First Wars, as you call them, Thanatos helped Apollyon breed new types of demons to fight on our side. The Crystallos designed to hunt for the horn, so we might find a way into Midgard unobstructed. The Shepherd, the Deathstalkers. We hoped they would spread and multiply throughout Midgard, but the Asteri caught wind of our plan and removed them. The Thunderbirds, Bryce said gaping. You guys made them too. So these Thunderbirds were like experiments with the similar kind of lightning that Hunt has, designed to fuel up Bryce. How did they know she would need fueling up? You guys made the Thunderbird to complement my power in case I never got the sword and knife, and if I ever needed a boost to open the rift. But when they were hunted down, you made Hunt, and then I was born. I thought I was already enslaved by then, Ada said, but we kept a close watch. Why do you think you're so adept at hunting demons? It's in your blood. Part of me is in your blood, Apollyon said. Just as he gave over some of his essence for the Crystallos, Thanatos said, so he gave something to me for you. His hellfire. Hellfire? Bryce demanded. The lightning. Capable of killing almost anything, even an Asteri. That's how you killed Sirius, with your hellfire. But Hunt's hellfire, because everyone needs fire in these books. Like, fire beats everything. It's like in Friends when Joey has fire. Her magic is also fire. We find out a bit about Hunt's actual dad. Good male. Apparently he died under interrogation. Okay, Bryce said hellfire and starfire, a potent combination, but Helena left all this shit to help end this conflict. It sounds like you guys just want me to open up a goddamn door for you to come in and save the day instead. Is it so bad, Thanatos purred, to have us do your dirty work? This is my world. I want to fight for it. Then fight alongside us. And at one point she refers to them as like, I didn't realize you guys were like intergalactic saviors. She was like, so if I were to open the rift, you and your brothers would be ready to swoop in. And he's like, well, the three of us will. The rest of them are off elsewhere doing other work. It's like in Endgame when Captain Marvel had to save all those different galaxies and stuff. So there was a lot of food for thought there. And then we come out of it and the two idiot kings were there and they have her friends and she flips and she battles them and it's epic. She like melts the Autumn King's hand and Baxine like says to Hunt, you have to help her, and he whispers, she doesn't need my help, and it's really cool. And then it looks like they're about to catch her off guard, and then who comes in? I'm starting to tear up even thinking about it. But Rune, he comes in with the Star Sword and he kills the Autumn King. And then he talks about Bryce being queen. It's great. And then she talks about how like this whole prophecy of reuniting the Fae. Their friends were instantly on their feet, Hunt putting a hand on Sathia's back to steady her. Then they all came to stand as one behind Bryce and Rune, and she saw it for a glimmering heartbeat, not a world divided into houses, but a world united. Helena created the prophecy to explain what these weapons could do, the power needed to take on the Asteri. But I think in her own way, the prophecy was also her hope for me, what I might do beyond wielding the power. It wasn't only about the Fae, Rune said quietly. It doesn't have to be, Bryce amended. It can be what we want it to. Our people, the people of Midgard, are united against the Asteri. And then Morven, that's his name, a Valen king, pipes up and is like, ha ha ha, good luck with that. You'll be the queen of Valen over my dead. As I was saying, Bryce drawled, for the moment I'm queen, I'm judge, jury, and I'm your motherfucking executioner. The King of Valen was still brazen with hate when Bryce lit Truth Teller into his heart. And then, of course, because that's not enough, Rune explains about the ley lines, and they think that the magic, the last third of Thea's magic, is in the land, and that's why it all fell apart, because the same thing happened to the prison when Selene put her magic into the land. Bright light, light it up. And so she did. She lit it up. She doesn't tell anyone, she just does it. True Bryce form. And then we have this really cute chapter where everything turns green. It's like the world pre-Asteri. And then she and Rune hug and cry, and it's just the best. I loved just that whole chunk so much. I'm finding this really hard to put down. Like, I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm looking forward to reading it so much. And now that we're like nearing the end, I think we're getting to the point where like the pace is just really going to start like gearing up, and it's going to get even more exciting. It does. Part of me is like, if we've learned all that out now, is there more to come? Because normally, like, you know, all gears up right towards the end. Like I said, we've not even had time to process everything that we learned from the Princes of Hell. I'm hoping we talk about that a little bit more, because I'm still confused on a couple things. I'm wondering if there's going to be like arguments about who decides what they get to do. If Bryce is going to be like, what's my power, so I get to choose, but then the others are going to want to have a say in it. I don't know. Naturally, I read one more chapter and we get to the end of part 2. So we get cell reception, and then Declan tells the others that there's been a hit from the Asteri. Not only did they get Asphodel Meadows, but also all of Aetherian's bases and camps. And with that, we're on to part 3. Part 1 was called The Drop. Part 2 is called The Search. And then part 3, well, part 2 is huge. Is The Ascent. Exciting times, my friends. I can't remember when the last time I actually talked to you was. I remember it's right on the cusp of part 3. I feel like it wasn't last night, the night before. It's now Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day. I'm wearing my rose necklace special. I wanted to update you because I think this is the last time I'm going to talk to you before I'm in the depths and the throes of the end. I have like roughly 100 pages left. This very much feels like it's going to be the last book in a trilogy. I feel like there's going to be a couple things that might carry over, and so I can see how there's like going to be continuation. The fact that I'm so confused as to whether this is the end of the trilogy or not feels like there was some kind of mismarketing going on. Because if it's the end of the trilogy, typically they really, you know, they ham that up in the marketing, and they're like, the finale, blah 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 blah. And I feel like I didn't see anything like that. Definitely a feeling since part 3 in particular of rushedness. I think where we left off is like we found out that the Asteri bombed all the camps, and like Lydia talked about how she bombed all the Aetherian stuff because of her, and they bombed Asphodel Meadows to get back at Bryce. A thought that's occurred to me, this is nowhere. So dangerous, and we've talked since in part 3 about how it's so dangerous, and even like Adis is like, choose life. If it like is that bad, don't do it. Choose life, it's not worth it. If no one knows what it is, then how do we know it even exists? Like, someone must have done it at some point for us to know this is a thing that happens. Elena was really scared of it. I don't know if we have any mention of Thea's thoughts and feelings towards it. And also, if it comes from reuniting Truth Teller and the Star Sword, is it linked to the cauldron in some way? Is it like the way they call it Know Her? I'm thinking like it's some kind of black hole type situation, and that's how like the cauldron was born, from like this weird black hole situation. And it feels very much like the cauldron has like similar capabilities to what we think of as a black hole. Something that, like, again, a reflection of what happened in part 2, something that started to grind on me is I felt like a lot of the conflict was resolved really quickly, and it didn't feel like we got a good payoff there. Like, there was a lot of interesting conflict about her not liking the Fae, and like I said, I don't think that's all like wrapped up in a neat little bow per se. I don't think we're done with that as a theme if we carry on with Bryce's story after this book, but it felt like that's something she got over very quickly. Like, it was like boom boom boom, emphasis emphasis emphasis, never mind. Also, like, her and Hunt, they had drama, but then they got over that pretty quickly. It didn't take, like, it just took them talking, which again makes sense, but like it feels like he just got over it and that's that. We find out that she needs to look for this magic, and she finds it instantly. So that all that stuff happened really quickly. Like, it felt like we like had to get our ducks in a row like quickly because we're running out of time now. Bryce is like, we don't have time to gather, the army's on Midgard, we have to go now, this is already shot, because like the Asteri made their move, they did the bombing, and so they have to respond like now. And so they decided they're just gonna like summon hell and then like go alone. And then like later on it's mentioned how like ridiculously lightly they're packed to go fight Easter, and I just don't like this feeling of rushedness. I like both ACOWAR and Vash had these epic battles that they had to been like prepping for / in amongst, literally for like, I'm pretty sure ACOWAR, like that feels like we're prepping for the war for most of that book. We're in the lead up to the war for most of it. All of Kingdom of Ash is like a war novel essentially. We're in war, and like I think objectively I can get over that. I think what's grinding my gears is that the book 1 was phenomenal, book 2 was a bit kind of, it felt fillery, it felt like it kind of didn't really have a direction, and I in my head assumed we were at least going to get 4 or 5 books. I think it's because we haven't spent enough time with these characters, with the story. It took Bryce a really long time to come around to the rebellion. Probably a lot of it is just that I'm disappointed because I wanted a longer series. Ethan keeps talking about how like he needs to help Sigrid, and Bryce is like, we don't have time, and it just, that put a bad feeling in my mouth. It just didn't, it felt off. I didn't like that. Also, since when can Rune read minds? Did this happen in Sky and Breath and I just can't remember? I distinctly remember in Earth and Blood, like him saying to Athar, like, I can talk in your mind but I can't read your mind back. But now like he's just having straight up conversations with people. When did that happen? Hypaxia makes the cure for the parasite again, like very quickly. She used the synth antidote as a base, and it seems pretty easy to her. I mean, there's magic, so like, I don't know, it just feels like sometimes in this series in particular, it's like, what's the actual like limits to power? What's the consequences? Where are the rules? Because if anyone can do anything like that, and that's one of the reasons why like ACOTAR, I get those vibes from ACOTAR as well, so I don't, and I loved the first 2 books and I didn't feel that in them so much, so like it's making me worried that it's starting to creep in a bit now. She makes the cure, Ethan takes it, and he has snow ice magic, and like it's so much better, he can shift so much quicker, his senses are so much more enhanced. Ethan says at one point like, if this is what he's like, and when Therian takes it he like bursts all the pipes in Hypaxia's house, then what is Hunt and Bryce gonna be like? I can only imagine. I'm so excited to see that, especially Hunt. And then so Ethan then goes to see the wolves to explain all of this, to explain what's going on with the Asteri, and to try and get any help he can, and explain about Sigrid, and just come clean and give them the cure. Sabine shows up with Sigrid, and she nutses Sigrid as her heir. And then the Prime comes in and is like, I did not approve this, and it's so cool. And I was so excited and giddy in that moment, and the Prime makes Ethan his heir, and then Sabine like stabs him in the face. She stabs her dad in the face. Truly psychotic behavior. And then Sigrid eats the Prime's second light. Where I've left it, we don't really know what's going on with Sigrid. She's like gone off. Ethan like bites the Fendir sword into lots of little pieces. I think he bites into 7 pieces, which is a holy number, and he becomes Prime. Well, I mean, it didn't happen. It did not happen the way I thought it would. Ethan, he's just such a sweet little pup, and I just really hope he ends up okay. It is funny because automatically, like the few however many pages since he's become Prime, I definitely feel like there's been a shift in the way he talks and like the way he orders people now. He's so much more authoritative. Okay, so then we have Theron and the River Queen, and he makes this epic speech to her. I loved what he said. So he just like owned up all his crap and like said it how it is and was like, yeah, but you need to help these people, and if not, you're complicit. And this impetulant brat is like, no, you still have to marry me, blah 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 blah. And he's like, fine, okay, I will marry you if you help. And the River Queen like, I do not accept. And I just like the gasp that came out of my mouth. I knew she was gonna say something like that. She's like, I respect you now, but like I still don't want you anything to do with my daughter or me. And she like shows him some respect and she's gonna help. And then we go to Bryce, and she opens up the portal. She doesn't open it up to hell. There's like a woman inside in front of our place. For a minute I thought it was Feyre, and I was like, wait, what? It's Nesta. She gives her parents to Nesta. The gasps that came out of my mouth. She wanted the mask to help defeat the Asteri. Makes sense, that tracks. Obviously it's a really powerful, dangerous weapon, and Nesta seems to be somewhat attached to it. So again, obviously Nesta's reluctant to give it to her, and so Bryce is like, I'll give you my parents as like safeguarding, like I'll have to come back for them. And Nesta's like, no. And she's like, okay, take them anyway then, because if we fail then they're not going to be safe here. At least on your world they're going to be safe. And so Nesta has Bryce's parents. Really looking forward to the next ACOTAR book to see like from their perspectives all of this. And then the Harpy shows up and her wings are white now. I can't even remember what color her wings were before. And the Harpy seems to be like all but a Reaper. Like they brought her back to life, but she's not really there. And Bryce uses the mask to kill her. Oh, and Isaiah, Naomi and Celestina rock up because they've been hunting the Harpy because she's too monstrous, and Celestina and Hunt have some tension. And again, I don't think that's fully resolved, but that's like, that kind of makes more sense because we needed like a result there. We can't let that fester. He was like gonna kill her. He was so mad. And I distinctly remember like I didn't even blame her that much in the end because they weren't letting her in and like explaining stuff to her. They kept like making plans with her and then ditching those plans. But he was really mad because now like she was the reason he got enslaved because they betrayed them. Asphodel Meadows was like the last straw, and that like turned her, and so she's been trying to like atone and make up for it ever since. And he managed, I mean this is the most important thing, he managed to break off his black crown. He managed to free Isaiah as well. But we've got Hell, the armies are coming in. I loved it when like Adis was there and Bryce says something snarky because of course she does. She reminds me so much of Selena. And they get this call from Rune because Pollux has kidnapped the twins, and so they have to go get them. And she's like, of course I'll help you. But really it's just like that's one thing on the checklist of their already really long plan. Like they don't actually have any immediate action to that. And then we have this like I think whole showdown thing with the Underking. He talks about how the vampires and the Reapers are from hell. The vampires would feed off the Reapers, I think. And the Underking talks a little bit about the world he's from. So it's either Rhysand's world, or again, I'm presuming the Throne of Glass world, which is where these shifters came from. My interpretation, I'm really confused. I'm so confused. And he's like dead now, so I don't know if that's ever going to be clarified. I was birthed by the void, but my people, they were not unknown to your own ancestors' wolf. So that would be the Throne of Glass Fae. Kept through when they charged so blindly into Midgard. This place is much better suited to my needs than the caves and barrows I was confined to. See, that like gives me like prison vibes from Sans world. From the Shifters world, you were not known as Shifters then, boy. But then that's the Throne of Glass world. And she, the Underking, went on, gesturing to the unusual depiction of Urd towering above him, was not a goddess, but a force that governed worlds. A cauldron of life. Is this mother? Brimming with the language of creation, Erddig Wahir, a bastardized version of her true name, Word. Now, What does that term remind us of? Maybe like word keys and wyverns from the third class? Like, I can't remember any more examples, but I remember anything associated with the Vogue like had word in the name essentially. Word marks. There was a Reddit thread from 2 years ago, how to explain word to a first time reader. Isn't it just an ancient magical language? I feel like there's enough hints that it could be from the fact they said from Ethan's world, and Ethan is a shifter, so he came from the scarier Fae, the not Rhysand's world Fae. I feel like it's the third class world. That was very misleading because Erd sounds like mother of the cauldron, word, whatever. Very confused. Anyway, between Ethan, he's like talking to Connor, and Connor gives him this bullet, and King's like, that's enough, you've had your time, and Ethan's like, no. It's enough of this, enough is enough. Jesper tricked Hypaxia into killing the Underking, so she's the head of Thema Shadow. She seems really bummed out about it. This is something that's definitely not going to be resolved in this book. She has a conversation to Theron. I forgot like she and Theron are friends, and he keeps calling her Pax, and he's like, what's wrong? She's like, it is what it is. Which, yeah. I love that she can now command Jessica though. She's like, okay, well, I make you my second in command and you have to do what I say. We kind of got to say bye to Connor, I think, for the amount of effort we put into trying to speak to Connor and the amount of like guilt Ethan had. The fact that he spent like 5 minutes just trying to catch him up with what was going on and like not actually talk to him. That felt like such a waste. And again, we didn't get to see any of it. We got to see like, okay, that's it, time's up. They didn't say like, I love you to each other. Connor said like he was always gonna be proud, and then that's it, he left. I started tearing up, and then when like I realized that it's not actually about emotional reunion, it's just about getting this bullet, I didn't care anymore. Again, like that's part of the feeling of this like weird rushness, this weird like we have to fit everything in, and the like convenience of this magical bullet which inevitably is going to help them. And I mean, I kind of love that it's going to be in, I can't remember, like the Godslayer rifle or whatever it's called, because that's how it started. I don't know, I just wish we got more emotion in that, saying goodbye properly. I wish they got to properly say goodbye, and that's not what it felt like. Anyway, the Viper Queen comes for Therion, and Sathia has a friend who's been turned by the Viper Queen, who may or may not be like an ex or a love interest or something's going on there. And who shows up but Hypaxia and Ethan, and they're like, you don't want to make an enemy of us. When the Viper Queens were like, fine, I guess you get to live, Therion. And they're like, no, we'll let you live. There were so many exciting parts, like all of the stuff with Ethan becoming the Prime. I was just like gasping and crying and freaking out, and like with Bryce and Nesta, and then this section I really loved. There are some good moments in this third act, I will say. And then Sathia leaves Therion, and he can't stop thinking about her, and I really felt like there was something going there. Again, I don't feel like that's going to be resolved in this book, so maybe that's something that will get carried over into the next one. Bryce also mentioned that it's like it's only been a couple weeks since the last book. Like she's like, the last time I was here, referring to the wings in the Asteres, like again, is it the palace? Like the wings were all here a couple weeks ago, when like aka the end of Sky and Breath. Like that's mad. Like it, and this book has been like boom 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 boom. Like there's not been any time to chill. I think also probably because it's been like 2 years for us. And then where I've left off, they are like free the wings. The wings are gonna go find their souls and then reunite with the mech suits that are gonna be commanded by Isaiah and Naomi, who like bow down to Hunt, and they're like, he was like, I'm not an archangel, get up. I love Hunt. Hunt feels like more dude bro than all of them, and there's just something about him that I do really love. And then Rigulus, I feel like I always say his name wrong. I feel like I say Rigulus, and his name's like Rigulus. He walks in, and the mask starts like freaking out. He's like, is he breathing, is he not breathing, is he dead, he's alive, he's all of them at once, which is weird. Just like we were pinning so much on like the fact that he wouldn't know we were coming, that he didn't see hell. And the Harpy told him like he knew the whole time, he's been preparing for them. And so literally the last thing that's happened is he's like sprung out the troops in the Eternal City, and we're about to be in war. I'll see you when we're in the midst of that. Okay, hi, I just filmed the intro. But for you, I've just now finished the book. It's actually been a little minute. I wanted to kind of try and have some time to process. I think I last updated you Wednesday? It's now Saturday. I finished the book Thursday. So, okay, let's just, I don't know where to begin. Just go with the notes. I don't think the notes are in order, but my thoughts on the end are kind of all over the place. So that's the most structure I've got for you, I'm afraid. The first thing I've written down is about Lydia. So obviously the twins were captured, Pollux had them. Rune shoots Lydia in the leg because she's like running around like a crazy person trying to find her kids. I mean, it's like she's gonna get herself killed. I can't allow this. So he takes one for the team and shoots her in the leg so he can go find Pollux and figure this out. Obviously Lydia, she's not too happy about that. But in the long scheme of things, naturally, because that's the theme of this book, it seems like she gets over it pretty quickly. And Pollux is like walking around like, Lydia, Lydia. That was so creepy. I loved the way that was set up. I love that Therian joined in. Lydia gets the antidote. Therian gives it to her and her magic is unleashed and she has fire magic, which is not necessarily a surprise because of he appeared as Day. And I feel like we got little tidbits about the way she was described that kind of would suggest that she has fire magic as well. She kills Pollux, right? I'm pretty sure she does. And I think she kills Mordock as well. Like, that's what it looks like is happening here. She's got really strong fire magic. Who does that remind you of? This is when she's like, I think she's like about to die. She thinks she's gonna like blow something up and just like take one for the team. Danica approaches her, somehow learned thing about Lydia's paternal bloodline and wanted to know if Lydia has any strange gifts. Fey-like elemental gifts. She debated killing Danica then and there to keep the gift. Like, she already knew she had like an inkling at least of fire magic. And what else did Danica know? Could she know about her sons? The shifters were Fae from another world, Danica had explained, blessed with a Fae form and a humanoid one, gifted with elemental powers. Confirmed what Lydia had long guessed, why she had named Brannon after the oldest legends from her family's bloodline. A Fae king from another world, fire in his veins, who had created stags with the power of flame to be his sacred guards. Sound familiar to you? Maybe a Brannon Galathinius? Because I mentioned earlier on, how does this interact with the timeline from Throne of Glass? Like, I assumed it was like pre two Fae queens, you know? At least one of Brannon Galathinius's kids, it looks like, went through the portal in order for Lydia to exist. So Lydia is a long lost descendant of Aelin and possibly Dorian? I forget the family tree. Is that why she was able to detect her fire magic though? Because we all know how powerful the fire magic is. It's like unstoppable, more or less. Like, Aelin was pretty much a god towards the end of that series. So was it so strong that she started to get inklings of it, even though she technically, like, it was supposed to be suppressed, it was too strong to suppress fully? That's my thinking. I really hope something comes of that. I really hope the Throne of Glass world is eventually connected. And then another like big world building type thing that we learn is the writing on Bryce's back is in the Asteri language. My first question is, how did Danica know the Asteri language? Maybe when she snuck in and she got the intel, she found the Asteri language. Interesting that that is the language of the Book of Breathing. So the Asteri, therefore, it would suggest wrote the Book of Breathing from the Akatar world. And they talk about how you can use that language to walk between worlds. I mean, like word marks? Because wasn't that like, albeit that's, were they symbols? Very similar magic though, because that was literally the point of word marks, to open portals and whatnot. I don't think there's a connection, but I can hope. Rune has starlight magic too. It's always talked about how he had like, his magic was more based in shadows, and then he takes the antidote and he like blinds some people with his starlight magic, and it's so cool. I just loved Rune in that section where he's like, take me, I'll trade you. And then we have the kind of like the big showdown. So Hunt and Bryce have already killed one of the Asteri together and they're zapping around. She wants to break down the first light core, but Rigelus is in the way and gets the Godslayer rifle or whatever it's called and the bullet. She decides she's gonna go back and do it alone. They try to convince her not to, because they say like, if you blow it up, your whole world will collapse essentially. And she shoots it anyway. Rigelus grabs her and she uses his magic, which is actually just like first light magic. Is nothing that fancy, it sounds like. She sucks up his magic because she's a battery, and she channels it into the horn in her back. The Asteri language can open up portals to worlds, and so can the horn. So when Danica chose to write it in Asteri language, was that just to like double up the chances in case the horn didn't work? That either way, whether she uses the as a horn or whether she uses the Asteri language, she will still be able to open portals? Is that what happened there? Need the horn. She could have just had it in the Asteri language, but then she would have had to get Rigelus to teach her how to do that, I'm assuming. Why did she write it in the Asteri language if not for like a reason? Danica doesn't do things without reason. So off she goes. She opens a portal, and in goes the first light bomb, essentially, for lack of a better word, and in goes the Asteri and Bryce with them. and she's happy to make the sacrifice. Hunt is like, no, I do not accept this. Shahar shows up in the mech suit and he knows it's her. Everyone bows down and she helps him go get her back, and then everyone is holding open the portal to help her come back, and that was a really sweet moment. I really love that. And they get her back, but alas, she is dead. Who rocks up but Hypaxia and Jessica. Jessica sacrifices her life for Bryce. This sent me. At one point when I flipped ahead to like look at how many pages there were or something, I had seen that Bryce talks to Jessica, so I knew she wasn't gonna die. So I wasn't like that bothered up until this point. I was like, okay, let's get her back, let's bring her back to life already. Obviously I didn't realize that Jessica was gonna sacrifice the rest of her life for Bryce. I never knew that, Quinlan, that she meant anything to you. Jessica's brows rose, and a bit of the prickly sorceress scene you returned. Of course she does. Do you know how hard it is to find a competent assistant? I started crying right then and there. And then they go, and she sees the pack of devils waiting for her, and she waves, and Danica calls out to Bryce, light it up, and Bryce calls it back. I was just shook. Jessica and Bryce hug, and Bryce comes back to life, snarky as ever. Bryce abolishes the Fey monarchy. She wants to set up a democracy instead, so that would be interesting if we get to see that kind of trying to be figured out in the next book. It's very different, I feel like, to all her other series. All her other series are really like gung-ho. We are kings. Rhysand is like trying to become a king on the slide, kind of. So that could potentially be really interesting. And then also we literally end off with the fact that Pegasus are coming back. There's Pegasus are back, and Baxine is freaking out. That was funny. And it was a really sweet ending. I do think in terms of an ending, like, it ticked a lot of boxes of what we would like to see. I wasn't that emotional at the end, in part because it was only just like dawning on me then that this is the end, but also because I did kind of have a feeling of anticlimax. The Asteria was set up to be such a big bad, but then the 6 Asteria are like reusing other people's magic, whereas the Vogue, their magic be bad. I really want to see like a fight between the Princes of Hell and the demons and the Vogue. I feel like they've got very similar vibes happening. The way Adis's magic was described as like nothing in depth and everything bad, it reminded me a lot of the way the Vogue's magic were described as like just everything bad, like worse than death. I wonder if Erd / Word / the mother of the cauldron / this god that came from the Throne of Glass world, it would make sense if she came from the Throne of Glass world, because there were gods trapped there, so maybe she saw this and thought this was her chance to get out. But like, it tracks that she could have come from that original world of the original gods. And also thinking about that world of the original gods, you know how they like go home in Kingdom of Ash, and then Bryce is like, psh, I can't remember why she's mad at them, but she's mad at them anyway. Somehow Bryce and Aelin are very similar in my mind now. Aelin slashes open a hole between, maybe she uses her word mark magic, anyway, she slashes open a hole in their world. All these like demons, I feel like it's described, these dark monstrous things come in. I wonder if that's Hell's demons. Could be. Where was I before this? Yeah, the Asteria was set up to be such a threat. I thought this was gonna be a long epic journey. It just doesn't feel like we got enough payoff there, especially in the way she killed them. Like it was like that essentially. All she had to do was open up a portal and shove them in. Granted, there was a bit of a battle and they killed one before. I just wanted a bit more of a struggle. The battle itself was like 48-ish pages long, which I suppose is like a decent amount of time, but because we were like jumping around so much, we didn't get to see that much actual fighting, which I feel like is always the way, because we're too busy being with our characters who are talking and blabbing and strategizing rather than actually fighting, because they're too important to fight with the grunts. I feel like that happened in the end of ACOWAR as well. That's kind of why I didn't love ACOWAR's battle as much either. So many of the time, so often, my biggest critique is I wish the battle was longer. I want to see it. I want to be in the throes of war with the fighting and to see what's actually going on. This is like the climax, so I want it to be drawn out and as detailed as we can possibly get it to be. Yeah, I feel like I've blabbed a lot in this video already about how I wished it was longer. We'd had a book, I think, in between Sky and Breath and this one. Wish the end of this book was like preparing for war, and then we could have had kind of a Kingdom of Ash style war book. I suppose like they needed to catch the Asteria off guard. That was the only way they were ever going to kill them. I understand all that. Like, I've made peace with it. I do think it's quite successful as the last book in a lot of different ways. We had a lot of information revealed, a lot of stuff came together. We did have a few cool fights. I wanted there to be a few more. I enjoyed the plot of the book overall. I would say I love the trilogy because I love the characters and I love the events. I do think I enjoyed this one, and I would argue that it's stronger than Sky and Breath. I think one of the things with Sky and Breath, so many things were opened and then not closed, whereas this one was the opposite. Like very few things were open, but everything was closed. I'm sure this video is long enough, so I'm gonna wrap it up now. I think I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a strong last book. I think the series overall has some lost potential. I don't think it's the strongest of her books. I don't think it's the weakest. Grass is still my favourite, then probably Crescent City, then probably ACOTAR. To be honest with you, it's either lower, upper, or upper middle for me in the Sarah J Maas range. I'm very excited to see what happens next. I mean, she went our next book is being an ACOTAR book, and I'm really excited about it. Those are all my thoughts and opinions. I would love to hear what you thought of House of Flame and Shadow in the comments. How does this trilogy, this series compare to the others from Sarah in your opinion? Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful morning, evening / night. My name's Shade. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye!